All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Resource Stage, April 9th. Today we are going to be covering digital audio consoles. I am Logan Valkyr. I work here in our rentals and live events, and later on we will be joined by Don Clausen from our sales team. All right, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. You guys here in person, if you have any questions, we have this microphone. It's nice and foamed. Mark will throw it at you if you have questions. Anyone online, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat, and we will do our best to keep an eye on that and get those questions in person. All right. So, digital mixers. We're going to start off with what's the point? Like, what does your mixer do? That's kind of a preliminary way. Why do you need it? So, my mind, there's basically three functions of an audio mixer. First function is going to be receiving all of your sources. If your mixer has to be able to accept all of those inputs. And then from there, processing the inputs. So in this example that I have here, it's just a microphone getting a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, and then, well, actually kind of a lot of EQ, and then getting sent out. And then finally, routing those outputs. And in this example here, you can see we have our main speakers, our delay speakers, green room, stage monitor, and then a front of house monitoring. So that's quite a few different destinations, all receiving their own mix, their own combination of inputs. All right, so now that we know kind of what's the point, they receive, they process, they output. What are the different types that can do that? So most people will know about old faithful analog consoles here. Very, I don't want to say simple, but electronically straightforward. Not a whole lot of electronic processing, that is the whole point. And then from there we also have digital consoles as a contrast. On these guys, they're more so like a computer. Your processing is done via chips, and there are no circuitry design. Like on an analog console, if you are to be, like for example, your VCA stands for voltage control. So you're literally changing the voltage. Whereas on a digital console, it's called a DCA, and it's digital control, and it functions the same, but underneath is very different with the implementation. Oops, and then also we have our hybrid mixers. We're not going to be talking about these a whole lot, but I just wanted to mention them because there are mixers that live in this kind of weird in-between space where they, for the most part, are analog, but they have some digital processing on board. So on the slide there, we have the Presonus, which is this guy here. So technically, when you're looking at just half the console, it is analog with the fact that your input, your channel strip, your EQing, your processing, all of that is very similar to what you would see on that guy over there, except for the fact that this also has an SD card recorder, and I believe it has an audio interface as well. So as you can see on my slide there, some of the examples are analog with an interface, analog with recorder, and analog with some type of digital FX, which this also has, sorry. There's a section here where you have digital processing for your effects. So, to continue on this kind of vein of comparing analog and digital, how do they deal with the various inputs? So, on an analog console, your channels and your inputs line up. And this is the kind of the origins of, channel strip. It's a strip for your one channel. It all goes straight down. So you can see on that example there, this picture, that's an XLR port, the black dot. So your input and your control for it all go straight down. It's very easy to kind of wrap your head around. But when you get to something digital, you don't necessarily have to be plugging in locally to the channel strip that's controlling it. So that, in my experience with rentals, is something that confuses people a little bit. So that's why we have the Dante on there and the stage box to just kind of show that your input one can be receiving something over Dante. So Dante is an IP-based, it's technically, it does video and audio, but for the most part we use it for audio here at Horizon. So you can set it so that your microphone that is plugged into your network that is, in a conference room on the other side of the building, if your console is also plugged into that same network, you can assign that to your channel 1. So you have nothing locally plugged in, but you still have a channel input on that channel. And the same thing applies for stage boxes, and depending on the digital console, there are different ways of having those extra inputs as well as outputs. Oops, I gotta stop going backwards. There we go. So kind of in the same vein, channel control itself. So as you can see on the two images there, also, if you look at any one of these consoles in comparison to this analog guy here, one of the first things you'll notice is that there's just so many more knobs and buttons, right? And comparing these guys, most of them have, your mute, probably some kind of monitor, and probably a fader, but even then, they're not standard across, right? They don't all have the same, and that's because, like it says there, processing and routing is usually found within a screen and involves some type of deeper dive, whereas on an analog console, I want to send something to one of my auxes, I know all these yellow ones are getting my auxes, I can just send it, there's no menu diving. And I think that's part of the reason that some people these days still really prefer digital console is the sound, but also just not having to go diving to find, your different channel controls. All right, and then it's the exact same thing, but a different parameter. We have our sends. So sends, like I just said with the auxes there, got a bit ahead of myself, but your sends are going to be hardware knobs, whereas on some digital consoles you might have, I'm trying to see if any of these ones do. Not really, like some digital consoles like the Avantis here, it does have knobs per channel, and you might be able to, depending how you have your workflow set up, use that as your, your reverb send or something like that. But typically, again, on a digital console, to access your sends, you're going to be doing a bit of menu diving. And then finally, our channel control. Oops, I went backwards there, didn't I? Yes, sorry. Our groups, finally our groups. So this is probably one of the bigger differences when it comes to using an analog versus a digital console, because the way that digital consoles use groups is kind of a little bit different. On on an analog console, to assign something to a group, there are literally buttons next to each channel, and say, I think I have a picture of that on the next slide, yeah. So say you want to send your channel 1 to group 1, you would hit that button for group 1, leave it pressed in, and that's how you would send that. Whereas on a digital console, depending on the console, you might not even have all your groups assigned to a fader yet. And you're going to have to, again, go into the menus, probably where you have your sends, and turn up that send to the group, and then go into, so what this is here is the fader assignment for, I believe that's an SQ. No, that's an Avantis. And so that is one of the things with a digital console. Not only can you build these custom groups in kind of a more manageable way than having to hit these buttons, it gives you more control, but you can also control where it sits on the mixer, because your analog, you have these 8, they're always going to live here, and that's it. Whereas on a digital console, say you want your first bit to be, you got your drum kit, your musicians, whatever, but then you have like this giant choir, and you don't have enough faders to have like your 6 choir mics or whatnot. So you assign that all to a group, and then you can just set that to your last fader on that page, and that way you have quick control over that. So that's kind of a big difference too between the two. Just the way that groups are handled. Some digital consoles will have slightly different names for groups and slightly different routing. So that's just kind of more depending on the console itself, and different brands will use slightly different words as well. All right. So the channel strips themselves, which is kind of what we've been talking about so far. So a channel strip is the straight line down on any console, and it's very clear on any one of these consoles to differentiate the strips. And so your channel strip can be either an input or an output. And so most digital consoles, but not all, will have your gain, your mute, and a listen, and hopefully a fader. The reason I say not all is because we have this guy here. This is an 18-channel digital mixer, but looking at it, you wouldn't really guess that. It has no faders, very limited a number of buttons, but it has all the same functionality, if not a little more, than other digital mixers in its price range. All right. So going off of that, we do not have knobs for all of those different parameters. Like, that's really, all of these slides are kind of just hammering away the same point, that when you're using a digital console, you have to just expect a certain degree of menu diving. You have to expect to not necessarily have everything at your fingers. And for some people, that's great. For some people, they can build a scene, a show in a certain way where they just know where everything is, and they're not looking at, an insane number of encoders. So say for something like live events, you want to keep it really simple, you want to be able to respond really, really quick, you need that. For recording, for example, and you need really fine-tuned control, I could see some people then preferring analog. So when you're thinking about using a digital console, really trying to wrap your head around how much of that menu diving you're going to be doing and how that fits into your use case is pretty important. But then that being said, like I was saying, you can customize. Most of these consoles up here have soft keys or programmable encoders, that type of thing, and that's the way to get, that's the manufacturer's way of kind of helping you out with not having all those knobs laid out right in front of you. Instead, you have knobs that you can customize to whatever you need in that moment, or for that specific show. And then, so some digital consoles have no channel strip at all. Like, their channel strip is just represented to you on a screen, and everything that you see is fully digital. So that's why you cannot say anymore that you have to have a fader, you have to have a mute button. There is no standard for what a mixer is anymore. As long as it can process input and output audio, it's going to fall under that category most of the time. All right, and then consoles as well. I was just saying the screen. There are consoles like that one on my slide there that has no screen, no buttons, no encoders, and that is actually slightly more I/O than the one beside it that has the screen. So that's just kind of an example of the vast array of different configurations you can get for digital consoles. The benefit of something like that is you could rack mount it, kind of tuck it away if you don't have a lot of space, and then you can still access it via a tablet with their app. So that's, again, just goes back to how you're using it and how it's fulfilling the needs that you have in your particular use case. All right, and then this is kind of, I kind of got ahead of myself here, but so this is kind of explaining, or demonstrating just how vastly different the workflow and the operation can be, even between different digital consoles. So on side there, we have a DLive, which is probably Allen and Heath's flagship, their largest and most capable console, and next to it we have their CQ. And so that is a very strong example of just two very, very different ways of processing audio, but still both digital consoles. All right. So things to really think about when you're purchasing a console or renting a console or just going to be using a console. The inputs, like we said at the beginning, how those inputs are getting into your console. Are they coming in with a stage box? Are they coming in over Dante? Are they coming in over something more proprietary like S-Link? Are they local? So these are all kind of factors to think about when you're selecting a console for an event or for purchase. And how exactly does it handle those different functions that you need to have it be capable of. So, in certain spaces, you might not need much of an EQ, right? You could have a well-tuned system with a processor. You had Dawn or one of us design your system for you, and everything's great. So you don't really need a lot of EQing when you have a guest speaker coming in or somebody who, it's their microphone, you're not used to miking them. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. As opposed to when you're doing something in a live event where you're going to need potentially quite a bit of EQing because you're in a space where you're bringing your own sound system, you're tuning it yourself. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind, how much processing do you really need, right? Because not all digital consoles are created equal. Some of them are going to have much more complex processing than others. So another thing to just really keep in mind is if it's going to meet those needs and how it's meeting those needs. And that's kind of, yeah, so that's my overview basically on comparing analog to digital in the sense of your workflow and just the way that they're laid out. They're laid out differently, but also the same, which is very interesting to think about. Yeah, that's kind of my spiel for opening us off, and I think I'm going to pass this off to Dawn now. Something happened with my microphone there for a second. And Dawn is going to give us a more in-depth look at these actual consoles themselves, and then I'll be back at the end to talk about the CQ there.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Logan. Thanks for that introduction. Some of you may be wondering where Carl is tonight. He is not here. He's actually in Montreal, and he's attending the the Exposine trade show there. So that's why he's not here, and Logan and I get to host this event, and we've been preparing for it quite a bit. So tonight my part, I'm going to be talking a lot about the Allen and Heath Q mixing console and the SQ, kind of comparing the two and talking a little bit more in detail about why you might want to have one or the other. The consoles we're using tonight, all of the consoles up here except the Presonus over there, they are all audio or Allen and Heath, and that's a manufacturer that we use quite a bit. We have access to other consoles, and we do sell them, but we do tend to gravitate towards the Allen and Heath because they are a simple to use mixing console, and they sound good and they work really well. Our clients tend to really like it. We've put in Allen and Heath consoles in some churches, in some applications where we're replacing another manufacturer's console, and they really like it. They've really liked the change. That happened just a few weeks ago, and so we actually put in a Q in that instance, and they really liked it. So let's look a little bit more at the Q series mixers. I'm gonna talk a lot about the Q series and then go to the SQ in a little bit. The Q series mixer is, or the family, I should say. It's got 5 different components in it. The QU16, QU24, QU32, QUSB, and the Q-Pack. And they all have different applications and different reasons why you might want to select them. Let's go through them quickly as we talk about it. I'm just going to turn that a little bit more so I can see that easier. The Q16, first of all, the Q mixing console, it is what we would call a fixed input mixer. There's no way of adding additional inputs to the mixer. It is fixed. So the Q16, it's got 16 mic line inputs on it, and in addition to 3 stereo inputs. There's no way of making that QU16 into a larger console. It is pretty fixed. It's got 12 mix outputs, 17 faders, and 4 soft keys. So it's a real small basic mixer. It's actually can be rack mounted, which fits really well in some applications, and it's a great little mixer. The Q24, again, same type of thing, but the QU24, which is this one here, it's got 25 faders, 24 mic line inputs, 20 mix outputs. It's got a few more than the QU16, and 10 soft keys. So the soft keys are things that we can program to do certain effects or various things. These ones are programmed, the first few are programmed for mute groups, so we can do that. And there's a variety of other things that those can be programmed for to make your operation simpler to use. The QU32, again, 32 mic line inputs, 33 faders, 24 mix outputs. It's got an extra couple of group outputs that the Q24 does not have. 33 faders and 10 soft keys again. So these are a simple to use audio mixer. We've sold an awful lot of them, and people really like them. The two that are a little bit more oddball is the Q-Pack digital mixer. This is designed to be rack mounted. It has 32 inputs available to it. However, only 16 mic line inputs are on the mixing console itself. You get the additional ones by adding a stage box. And then the control for this, you can use either the controls on the surface itself. There's knobs and buttons and a touchscreen, and that can be used. We've actually used this in several applications where we've got this as the mixer for the venue, and then they use an iPad to connect to it, and then they can walk around and control it, and they've got their controls, all of the controls on the iPad. We're going to talk a little bit more about the iPads a little later. The last odd-looking QU mixer is the QU SB, and this is simply a rack mount stage box. And all of the mixing is done inside of it with an iPad connected to it. This QSB, it's got 16 mic line inputs on it, but it can control 32 inputs by adding a stage box. There's 12 to 24 mix outputs. There's 12 on board and an additional on the stage box, and so this is being a rack mount mixer with just sockets on it. It is an actual mixer, and it does what everyone wants to do with a mixer through the iPad app. So we're going to talk a little bit of the specifics of the QU, and one of the interesting things is, and a lot of the mixing consoles, digital mixing consoles these days, have used a DSP chip processor in it to actually do all of the processing. DSP is digital signal processing, so they put that in there. One of the downsides of using a DSP chip is that there is latency introduced in the audio signal. And this particular console, for every hop, every time you do another set of digital processing, it introduces another little bit of latency. So initially, there's 1.7 milliseconds of latency. And then if you add processing, every time you add another step of processing, you're adding another 1.7 milliseconds of latency. Doesn't sound like a whole lot. And somebody would say, well, that doesn't matter to me. You know, I do 4 or 5 different or 7 different or 10 different steps of processing. That's only, 17 milliseconds. Not a big deal in the normal sense, unless you're doing something like in your monitors. And that then can introduce something that's a little weird. Does that sound something that I need to be concerned about? Definitely RF. Okay, well, let's carry on. If something happens, then we can change it. Sure, we'll try that. So that's the DSP chip in processing. And a lot of digital mixing consoles have that as their processing power. We want to talk a little bit more about the specifics of what makes up the QU mixer and why one would want to have it. Some of the features that the QU has is that it's very simple to navigate. Logan was mentioning that there's menus that we need to get to get to some of the functions. The QU mixer was designed as a mixer that is, and I describe it as a digital mixer with an analog feel. Because on this particular mixer, the QU24, we've got 24 faders that control the mic line inputs. On the back of the mixer, there's 24 XLR connectors. And so each fader controls that socket. So channel 1 controls is channel 1 socket on the back, and so on down the road. So it has a very analog feel to it, and so therefore it's a little simpler to operate. There's not a lot of layers. We're going to talk about layers when we get to the SQ. This has basically, you can stay on this one layer and you're good to go. So lots of physical controls. This the QU it's got for the lots of physical controls up here. So we've got all of the EQ settings here. There's 12 knobs that adjust the tone controls on this mixer. On the old analog mixer here, we had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knobs that adjusted the EQ on there. The top one was a fixed high frequency EQ. The bottom one was a fixed low frequency tone control. And then the two center ones, the 4 knobs in the center, one knob adjusted the frequency that was being controlled, and the other knob was the attenuation and boost of that particular frequency. There was no way of adjusting the filter, the width of the filter, and only 2 bands of sweepable. On the Q mixing console, we have 12 knobs here. The top knob is adjusting the filter width. So if we want to adjust lots of frequencies here, let's see if I can we get that? Oh yeah, okay, you can see that. So we can adjust the frequency that it is affecting, and with the top knob, the width, we can adjust how many frequencies it's adjusting, and we can get down to a pretty fine width there. That would be used primarily for doing feedback control and stuff like that. Going a little bit wider would be for some more tone control. So the Q mixer, it's got lots of controls up here. Every control that you would need per strip, per channel that you want to adjust. The touchscreen. We've already demonstrated the touchscreen allows us to see what we're doing, and being a touchscreen, we can adjust the parameters. If we go back to here, we can select a parameter on there, and then this knob down here, this we can will then adjust. Whoops, that was a bad one. There we go. No, there. So we can use this bottom knob here to adjust it. Whatever we select on the touch screen, that becomes the active component. We can still adjust it with these up here, but that one there is also adjustable. There are some controls that show up on the touch screen, particularly in the compressor settings and gate settings, that are only available by accessing through the touch screen and using that encoder knob. Touchscreen has a dedicated rotary encoder, and so that I was just talking about that. We can select a parameter and then adjust it with that encoder there. Dedicated lit keys and screen tab, guide to meter and RTA views, effects racks, channel processing, USB audio control. So all of these knobs just beside the touchscreen. The two green ones are going to be associated with the input channels, and the gray ones below it are different ways of setting up the console. In the setup, we've got scenes, effects, and a home screen there. So a variety of very simple ways of getting around the console. Once you get to that particular button, then there's tabs along the top that you can further get to where you need to go. Generally, the parameters that you want to adjust on the QU mixer, you can get to with a minimum of, or with a maximum actually, of two button pushes. And that'll get you that gets you around really quickly and really easily. There's fewer layers on the QU mixer. We talked about that before as well. The 24 faders on the console. They are adjusting the 24 mic line inputs, and that's what this mixing console does. There are a couple of other layers that you can get to, but it doesn't add channels. It just gives you access to different faders. This particular one, the layers, the top layer will give you basically your outputs, control to the outputs. Those are the master outputs. And then one other neat feature of the Q mixing console is if you press both of these layers at once, it gets you to a custom layer. So you do have the ability of laying out these 24 faders to be however you want it. You can make the first 15 as the mic line inputs, and then the rest of them can be outputs or group outputs or DCAs or a variety of different things. We suggest that you do that only if you have operators that are fairly aware of what they're doing and how to lay that out. If you want help with laying that out, we can certainly help you do that. But that's basically most operators that we come in contact with, particularly with smaller churches. They'll leave it on the first layer, which is the layer it boots up on, and then they've got all of the access to all of their channels there. And the super strip is what Allen and Heath calls it. It's basically all of the parameters for each individual strip here are found up here on these knobs. The gain control, there's a high pass filter, all of the tone controls, a compressor, a gate, and the pan knob. And so you've got all the access for that right there. To select a particular channel on the QU mixer, you just select one of the green buttons here, and that will now activate these controls for that particular channel. It's pretty simple to navigate. Some more features. Let's see. There's an analog IQ preamp design. There's Allen and Heath has done some pretty good design work on the preamps found in here, and they're ultra low noise, and there's a warm musical sound. This console it does sound pretty good for what it is, and for the price point. I should say the Q mixing console, Allen and Heath released it back in 2013. They released the Q16, QU16. So it's 11 years old, but it is still a very, very popular console, and still one of the best in this price point for feature set and usability and how simple it is to use. There is a USB connection onto it. There's a USB-B connection on the back, as well as a USB-A on the top of the mixing console. That is for connecting to a computer. USB-B can be used to connect to a Mac or PC for multi-track recording on using a DAW or something like that. Using the USB-A on the top of it, you can record up to 18 channels of multi-track to a USB key. We recommend using a solid state drive recorder or drive, and then you can do that. That's easily set up in a menu on the touch screen, and it works really quite well. The QU mixer also has an automatic mic mixer. So if you've got a conference going on and you've got a variety of different microphones with people getting up to talk, and you want to be able to turn on and off mics easily, that automatic mic mixer can be set up to up to 16 microphone sources can be set up into it, and it just turns them on and off. Logan's going to demonstrate that on the CQ mixer a little bit later. And connection to personal monitor mixer. Allen and Heath has developed the ME series of personal monitor mixers. This is one here. It connects to the mixing console with just a single Cat cable, a shielded Cat 6 cable, and or Cat 5 actually, and all of the channels of the mixer show up here, and then you can configure this for the user to be able to mix their own monitors. Plug in a headphone. The Allen & Heath has a couple of different models available. This is the ME500, and they have the ME1. The ME1 is basically a full-featured personal monitor mixer with it's got a microphone built into it to pick up ambient sound, and there's a number of other features on the ME1 than on the ME500. The ME500 is a couple $100 less expensive than the ME1, but personally, I think the features of the ME1 outweigh that price. Let's see. Oh yes, we can connect a stage box. So over on the far side here, we've got a couple of examples of stage boxes. The QU mixing console, it works on I think I mentioned this before, 48 kilohertz architecture. And so there are 3 stage boxes that work with this. The AR84 with 8 inputs and 4 outputs, the AR2412, 24 inputs, 12 outputs. And then there's the AB168, which is one of those over there, the one on the far left. That has 16 inputs and 8 outputs. Again, it connects to the mixer through the D-Snake port on the back of it, and just a single shielded Cat 6 cable. And now you've got those inputs available. Now that does not expand the capabilities of this mixer. We've already identified that this is a 24 input mixer. So adding that does not expand the mixer, but it gives the ability to remote those inputs at the stage for when it makes sense. So the QU, it can connect through that D-Snake to the stage boxes and have remote inputs and outputs. And there's still some more here. Oh yes, digital consoles. One of the neat features of digital consoles is the ability to store and recall different things. The QU, the SQ, the Avantis back here, they all have the ability to store and recall libraries, scenes, and shows. Libraries is basically everything associated with the one channel. So if Sarah comes up and sings really nice on a Sunday or for performance, and you say, I really want to store those settings for when she sings next. So you can store that to a library in the QU mixer. A scene is a snapshot of all of the audio settings in the mixer, including the patch. If you've got something stored in the patch, some of the inputs are routed to your custom layer or whatever. That's all stored in a scene. Very, very handy for when you're doing a variety of different things, perhaps on a Sunday morning or from week to week. Maybe you've got several different worship teams or different groups that are singing. You can store those settings as different scenes, and so when they come, you can recall that for easy recall for when they sing. When I was doing sound at another church, one of the things I did was I would store a scene per song on the Sunday morning, and so because I did a lot of different changes and things to effects and EQs and levels and things like that, and I wanted to do that very simply, and so I stored each song as a scene, and then I just went through the scene file. And shows. The show is all of the settings in the console, including all of the scenes, and so it's basically a backup. When you're using the QU, when you own a QU console, we recommend that you do store the show fairly regularly, so that in case something does happen to the QU, that you've got a backup. You can give us a call. We can bring out another QU from our rentals and drop it in, and you don't even know that it's different. The QU mixing console, Allen and Heath also has a number of things set up in their libraries that you can recall. So a variety of different settings for different EQs and EQs and settings for different microphones from different manufacturers, and for different uses for instruments, different instruments and things like that. So it's a good starting point. If you're getting a show set up, you can go and look through their libraries and select those and start there. It's definitely something that we recommend that you make adjustments to as you go along, because those are good starting points. 4 effects engines in the QU mixing console, accessed through the controls on the right hand side of the console, and you can control a DAW using the Allen and Heath MIDI app over USB or the network. So it's a very, very versatile mixing console. It's got a lot of features to it. We didn't really talk about the operation of the mixing console, but a lot of the things that are found in it, and a lot of things that are found in a lot of mixing consoles, but this one makes it very, very simple to use. One of the other neat features of the QU is the apps that are available. These are all available on the iOS operating system. The QU app is available on iOS as well as Android. So the difference between them, the Q Pad is a full-featured control surface that you can access pretty much all of the controls found in the QU mixing console from your iPad. You can walk around, mix anywhere in the room. You can walk up beside monitors on stage and mix monitors right there. It's a very, very versatile way of doing things. These are all connected over Wi-Fi, so you do need to have the QU mixer connected to some sort of a network, whether it's an access point or whether it's a network that has Wi-Fi or a wireless router or something like that you can connect to it. The QU app is a personal monitor mixer, so that the user, the player, the singer, they can mix their own monitors from that app. Really, really versatile, works really quite well, and allows the person to personalize their monitor. Not quite the same as the ME series, but it gives a fair bit of versatility in that app. And the Q Control app is something that can be set up. We would set that up as Horizon when we do the install. It's a completely customizable app so that so that the operator can have access to just the parameters that they want to in order to control things. So it's really quite a versatile app, and it can work really, really well in certain applications where the user doesn't want to have access to everything on the mixing console, but they've got what they need on the app. So that is, I think that was, so that was the QU mixing console. Are there any questions? Yes, Mark. Oh, he's got the... All right. Later. So the SQ series from Allen and Heath, this is a step up from the QU mixing console, and it comes in 3 different chassis sizes. The SQ5, SQ6, and SQ7. We're going to go through those. We're going to go through basically what we did with the QU over with the SQ. So the SQ5, which is what this one is. This is, actually I should back up a little bit. The SQ series is there, even though there's different chassis sizes, it's all the same processing inside. They are all 48 channel mixing consoles. They just have different hardware attached to them. So the SQ5 has 17 faders. On the back of it, it has 16 mic line inputs. The way you get additional inputs and to expand the number of inputs is to use stage boxes to do that. And you can use any of the stage boxes that the QU has, or you can use different ones that have a little bit better preamps, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. So this has 16 faders, 12 line outputs, 17 faders over 6 layers, and 8 assignable soft keys. So again, we got the soft keys that can be assigned to a bunch of different features. The SQ6 expands on that a little bit. It has 25 faders, 24 mic line inputs on the back, XLR sockets. What else does it have here? 14 line outputs. So again, a little bit more than a few more physical sockets than the SQ5. 16 assignable soft keys and 4 assignable soft rotaries. So we've got some knobs. This particular one, the SQ5 doesn't have any rotaries, but the SQ6 and SQ7 does. Those are kind of neat because you can assign those to mix outputs or effects sends or returns, and do some adjusting right there where you don't have to have them on a fader. The SQ7 is the larger one. It's got 32 mic line input sockets on the back, 33 faders on the surface, 16 line outputs on the back, 33 faders, 16 assignable soft keys, and 8 assignable soft rotaries. So again, a little bit more. So that's kind of a little bit of an overview. I wanted to tell you a little bit more of the features of the SQ series. As I said earlier, it's 48 channels of mixing ability over the layers. There's 6 layer buttons over here, and you can assign or select those layers and lay them out however you want to. It is a 96 kilohertz mixer, so all of the processing in here happens at that. The QU is only 48. This is 96. And one of the real selling features of the Allen and Heath, some of the Allen Heath series, the SQ, the Avantis, and the D-Live are all based on this particular chip, the XCVI 96 kilohertz FPGA engine. So it's basically a processing chip in the mixing console that has been custom programmed so that Allen and Heath and so that the mixers can operate at an optimal way. We're going to get a little bit more into that. So there's an ultra low latency of less than 0.7 milliseconds of latency from input to output. The way that this chip has been programmed is it doesn't matter how much processing happens in your mixing console. This SQ, the Avantis, the D-Live has less than 0.7 milliseconds, no matter how much you do. It's always less than 0.7 milliseconds from input to output. So that's really, really fast, and works really, really well for in-ear monitors and a whole bunch of other things. 12 stereo mixes plus left-right. So we've got we've got a little bit more. Well, actually, we've got quite a bit more of processing mix outputs on the SQ than we do on the QU. 3 stereo matrix, 8 stereo effects engines. The SQ or the QU had 4. This one has 8. 60 by 64 I/O port, so we can put a card in the back that can allow us to connect to Dante or MADI or Waves, and allows you to have 64 inputs send, 64 inputs return, so everything can be digital through the signal chain. Multi-track recording, again, similar to the QU, but this one has 32 by 32 USB audio interface, so we can connect that to mixer and have more inputs. Remote expanders, we talked about that earlier. We've got the AB168. We've also got the ability to connect things like those 2 stage boxes there look to be pretty much identical, but they have different insides. The one on the left is actually a Dante interface, and so we can use Dante to connect to that. The one on the right is just the D-Snake connection for the QU. Can also be used on the SQ, but it does it works at the 48 kilohertz connection, whereas this can work at 96. The SQ it has the ability to change to work with the 48 kilohertz, and so you can use a variety of different things. Let's see, what else do we have here? Drag and drop layout for customized layers. So on the SQ here, we can lay out each layer however we want to, and we can assign whatever socket to whatever fader and lay that out on the console however we want to. Those customized layers have scribble strips, so this strip along here can be customized in color or label, and that can work out really well for laying things out, making it much simpler to operate. At a glance metering. So along the bottom of the just below the buttons here, just above the faders, there are these lights, and these lights, they can change in color and intensity depending on how loud the signal is coming in. So it's very easy to see, oh, it's a green light, I've got signal coming in, but the next channel over, it's got a red light, so it's clipping, so I've got to do something about that. One of the neat features as well about this console is over on the layers here, if you're on a different layer and something is clipping on a layer that you're not on, you'll see the layer light actually glowing red to say, hey, there's something peeking on that layer. Maybe you should go and check it out. So that's kind of a neat thing. 7-inch touchscreen. Oh, I forgot to tell you about that. On the QU, the QU16 and 24, the touchscreen is 5 inches. On the QU32, it is a 7-inch touchscreen, so it is a little bit bigger as well. The SQ console has a 7-inch touchscreen, so there's lots of space there to do all of the audio routing and parameter changing and whatnot on that. Soft keys and soft rotaries, we talked about that on the QU. So on this one, there's some soft keys here. There's 8 of them on the SQ5, and there's more on the SQ6 and 7. MIDI control app to control a DAW, so we can control your DAW directly from this over MIDI. MIDI can be over USB or over the Ethernet connection. Another thing that the SQ has is the ability to add deep processing. And this is an add-on. It's an additional expense from Allen and Heath, but you can pick and choose what types of extra processing you want from multi-band compression to specific compressors that if you wanted to. There's a bunch of different things that you can add on to this to give you the additional processing power that you might be used to on your old analog processors. Integrated SQ drive, so you can record up to 16 channels at 96 hertz or 32 channels at 48 hertz, direct to a USB key stuck in the front or a solid state drive. So there's a lot to that. Oh, there's still some more here. Again, ability to store and recall library scenes and shows. Automatic mic mixer up to 48 channels of mic mixing, so you can have all of the channels here turn on and off as needed. And we talked about expanding the inputs and outputs through the S-Link port to the stage boxes. An interesting thing is, while this is a 48-channel mixer, you can have up to 256 input sockets so that you can select from them. So if you're doing a large conference or a multi-band show, you can have each of the bands plugged into different sockets and just recall different scenes, and each scene will have a different set of inputs that can be routed there. And we talked about the different cards that are available to plug into the back of here, Dante, MADI, and Waves, just to give you that digital interface. 4 effects engines. There's actually 8 effects engines in the SQ, and we can control the DAW using the Allen and Heath MIDI control app. So that's an overview of the console itself. It also has a couple of apps that can be controlled, that can be used to control the mixing console. You've got the SQ Mixpad and the SQ4U. The Mixpad, again, is similar to the QU. It can control everything on the console from an iPad or an Android device. They both of them they're both types of apps are available. The QU is basically iOS, but the SQ is available for that. Another neat thing about the Mixpad is that you can also download it to work on Mac or PC. So you can actually do some offline editing and preparation of an upcoming concert, and then upload that to the console when you actually get connected to it. So that's the SQ Mixpad. The SQ4U, again, is a way of doing monitors, personal mixing for monitors, and it just works really quite well. Again, available for iOS or for Android. So that another thing about the Mixpad, and I forgot to mention this, is it can be used to actually add additional, how did I put that there? Personal monitor mixing for no, that's not it. It can be used to add additional control at the mix position. So you can have your Mixpad available here, showing maybe the EQ section of that particular channel, and the touchscreen can have a different thing on it, maybe the compression or something like that. And then as you select different channels, they're all linked, and so they will all change as you select them. It's kind of a neat little feature, and could be quite handy for quick access to a variety of different controls. Does anybody have any questions or anything about these two consoles? All right. You have to talk into the black circle there.
Hello. There's a lot of jargon there that I don't get, but there's one thing that I would like to ask, if you've got time, or if this fits your evening parameters. I don't understand what a matrix is. So you're saying 3 stereo matrix. What does that mean?
Good question. Matrix is basically an output of the console that derives its signal from another output. So, for instance, in a church setting, we do this quite often, where we've got maybe a speaker out in the nursery or out in the foyer, the lobby area, and we really want to send a nice signal out there, but maybe what's going to the main speakers, but we want to be able to control the volume separately. And so what we can do is, within the mixing console, we can route the main output to the matrix end. So that is a separate fader on this particular channel. If we go, where's the matrices? There they are there. So we've got 3 matrices over here, matrix 1, 2, and 3. So we can route the master fader signal to that matrix, and now we have this fader here that we can adjust the volumes of that output. It's exactly the same mix and signal as what's going to the mains, but it has a separate volume control. It's an interesting way of mixing, and it can be very, very handy, and it gives that added ability of having the extra output. Okay, we didn't talk about the Avantis back here. The Avantis is and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. The Avantis is a step up from the SQ. It is a pretty versatile mixing console. It's got 64 channels of inputs, and I forget how many sockets it can have, like, I don't know, 600 or something like that. So it's pretty versatile. It's got the two large touch screens, which is basically its user interface, and there's a lot of really neat things about the Avantis, but that puts it into the next price point as well. They're $13,000 to $15,000 somewhere in there for just the mixing console, and then you'll need to add mix racks and things to that as well. And then the top of the line mixing console for Allen and Heath is the D-Live. Logan mentioned it earlier. That's the one that's out on tours and things, where the mixing surface itself, while it has all the controls on it, it doesn't have any brains. All of the brains are in the mix rack that resides on the stage or on the platform. So it just talks to that. But it's a pretty versatile and pretty amazing mixing console, and that's, of course, is a next price jump up. So anyway, we wanted to talk about the SQ and the QU mixing consoles tonight particularly. Logan's going to come up next and talk about the CQ mixer. This is the newest release from Allen and Heath. It came out just at the end of last year, and it's got some really, really interesting features to it. So Logan's gonna come up and talk about that.
Thank you, Don. See if I can get this the right way this time. No, of course not. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about CQ family, and specifically this one CQ. And hopefully I can get that centered under this camera here, but we'll use that later. So kind of matching Don's format here, we're going to just go over some of the features of this family. So they all have a combination of XLR as well as TRS/XLR combo jacks. So those are really nice depending on how you're using it. You don't need to convert your TRS to XLR, just plug your instrument cable straight in. Also has stereo USB recording and playback with dedicated input channel. So there is a channel specifically for that input, as opposed to having to use up one of your XLR inputs or the two TRS inputs there. Also has a dedicated Bluetooth playback Bluetooth playback with its own dedicated channel as well. And then TRS assignable headphone out, and I believe the 18T has two headphones out, and then I believe the 20 also has two headphones out. And then 2 or 4 effects engines as well. The 18 and the 20 have 4, whereas the 16, the smaller guy, only has the 2. And so I'll go back to the photos of them really quick, just so you guys can see that a little better. So we have the 12 and the 18. Sorry, I said 16. It's 12. So the 12 and 18, very, very similar. 18 is just a little bigger. The 18 also has the Wi-Fi access point. The 12 does not have that. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. And then the 20B, as you can tell, does not have a screen, but does have that wireless access point. Like I mentioned earlier, that's something you kind of put in a rack, hide in the corner, and you walk around your space to do your mixing. I'll go through all this quick. So specifically, this guy here, the 18T. So we have 8 XLR and then 8 combo, and then 2 TRS that are a stereo pair. We have 2 XLRs and then 6 TRS for the outputs, which is a little uncommon, but depending on application, that could be great. If you're doing, stage monitor mixing, that type of thing, you go straight TRS to do monitors. Depending on the gear you have, that could be exactly what you need. We also have a recording interface, so you can see 24 by 22 in comparison, not quite as capable as the SQ. but still quite the comprehensive interface for, especially considering the size of the mixer. And then we have 3 custom rotaries as well as 3 custom soft keys. So as Don was mentioning when he was going through the different versions of the SQ, there is also the same idea. Obviously the SQ5, like he mentioned, does not have that, but the larger SQs have programmable rotaries. Same thing on the CQ, is a way to just quickly get around depending on what you're doing. Touchscreen, obviously, as you can clearly see, the only way to really control that, and the tablet. And then like I mentioned, you have 2 headphones out. They're assignable, just right here on the front. So depending how you're using it for recording, that type of thing, having that extra headphone out could be really useful. And like I also mentioned as well, we have that Wi-Fi for connecting a tablet. I did not make a slide about the tablet like Don did, but it is very, very similar, where you have iOS, Android app that you can control all of the parameters of the console just remotely. All right, and then so this is really the bread and butter of the CQ, the reason we're talking about it today. So this is Allen and Heath's newest member to their lineup of consoles. It's only been out for just under a year. And so with that, they're kind of taking some steps towards the automation and the just more smart. And you have to be careful with the word smart. It doesn't have AI. It doesn't rely on having an internet connection, but it does have something that might feel similar to using that type of technology. So the first thing that it has is something called Quick Channels, and we'll see if we can get this on the TV so you can see what's happening on the console. So this is our main home page right here, our home view. If we go quick start, hopefully you guys can see that. Here, see if I can zoom this in a little bit. Yeah, just a bit. All right. So there are a couple different options here.